Hope everybody is doing well. It's another very busy day here in Durham, North Carolina. And of course, it's a hot day as well because there's definitely some hot weather here. And it's been some hot weather, even though we do get some threat of rain every once in a while. But definitely it's been hot and sizzling here. I know a lot of people have been paying attention to the political lanes and what's going on in the political world. I know that here in Durham, we've actually got a legislator that has said that he is going to be running for our mayor's office, that being Mike Woodard, and we'll see what happens in that space. Some people might say that that is a step down as opposed to a step up, but who knows? Maybe I'll get him on one of these shows or on our World Edition or some other kind of spaces to see what he's got to say about why he would want to go from the uh, pot of the national politics to the frying pan of local politics because our local politician, our local mayor, actually stepped down after a bunch of infighting and all in that space. So she actually did not think last 2 or 3 years before she was like, y'all are fighting too much. So I think I'm just going to go and enjoy my new husband as he is about to get married. I don't think the marriage has taken place and all along those lines and enjoy family life. And this will be a second or third time around for her because you folks are just becoming too much of a political nightmare and all in that space. So definitely that is a thought that a lot of folks will be having even in the national and the international political lane. But I've got an amazing guest that's in that business space and is definitely doing some amazing things as well. So I'm going to bring in Sylvia O'Connor and see how the weather in is where she is at and everything because definitely a lot of times people are coming from the notion of having been in bad situations. And I was actually just talking to one of my co-hosts and was actually talking about his family background. He's in Australia and he was mentioning the fact that his family, and namely his mother, came from a lot of poverty background in the country of Fiji, if I remember correctly, and all along those lines. And now he is definitely seen as a major success in the world and all in that space. So it looks like you have also had that journey as well. And a lot of folks are thinking that it is almost impossible to go from poverty to prosperity, but it looks like you have had success in that world and all along those lines. So for those folks that are watching from around the world and want to learn more about Sylvia O'Connor and what you are all about, definitely share a little bit of your journey and what you are doing. And I'm sure that a lot of people will be interested in hearing about your background. And like I said, I hope that the weather is better there than it is here, because I know here we've been in the 90s and the feel like hundreds, but I do know that a lot of folks are very much in that home that heat environment and all in that space, whether you're in California or you're in New York or you're here where I am here in North Carolina and all along those lines. And you've actually even taken on a major company as well. But definitely, if you can just share with our audience a little bit about your story, and I'm sure we'll get into some conversations about a number of things. But I'm sure folks would love to hear about your story being a native of Louisiana. And actually, later on today, we'll have Dr. Anthony up there in DC, who is also a native of Louisiana. I think she comes out of the New Orleans area and definitely is a teacher advocate and all in that space. But definitely share a little bit about yourself being from Louisiana. And then eventually, I think, move into Detroit, which is definitely got some interesting background as well. So you've been in some very interesting spaces and all in that line.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Mark. I'm here in Louisiana. As you said, it is hot here. We're in the upper 90s with heat index feeling like it's over 100. A little bit about me. I grew up in a small city in Alexandria, Louisiana. I grew up in poverty, but shortly after I got out of high school, I realized I didn't have a lot going on for myself. So I had an aunt that would come and visit us every year from Detroit. She always asked some of my sisters to move there. I'm the youngest of five siblings. They all turned her down. But guess what? Sometimes you have to move out of your comfort zone. In order to move up in life, you just may need to move on. So that's what I did. Moved to the Motor City. My aunt was able to help me. I later went on to get a college degree and very successful today. But it started with me moving out of my comfort zone. We like to stay where we are, the same old status quo, and complain. At that time, before I moved to Detroit, I had never been out of the state of Louisiana. So again, you have to move on in life, sometime to move up and ask for help. Once she let me come to Detroit, she was able to help me. So once I got my education, a lot of things went on. Like I say, always grew up poor, getting handouts on government assistance, but I always had hope that I would not remain like that. You know, you can't lose hope. You have to see something better. And that was me. I took a chance. Um, Life is about taking a risk. So here I am today, very successful because of some things that have gone on in my life that I'm blessed and just promoting my new book and have my own company now, which is Sylvia O'Connor Store LLC. So I'm just continuing to look to go higher and not let my past determine my future.
No, that's a great thing that you were saying. I was actually related to some degree because I'm from North Carolina, still living in North Carolina now, but I did escape twice. One time that I felt was a good escape, and I'll explain that in a minute and everything. And the other one, not as good and all in that line. But the one escape was to go to college for 4.5 years, and that was back in the early 80s when I went to Milwaukee because I knew I wanted to get into the journalism field, and UNC had me, I think, either rejected me or put me on the waiting list. Some of our HBCUs, including North Carolina Central University, that have a strong media program now, did not have that at the time, and I probably could have got in as a legacy student and all in that space. But they were strong, I think, in English and theater, but didn't really have the journalism program that they have now. So Howard Fuller, who was a activist very much involved in the charter school movement and all in that space, was actually working at EOP at Marquette and asked me if I would consider Marquette as a opportunity and a place to go, and mentioned to me that there was a strong journalism program. I think I later learned after I got there that George Reedy, who is the press secretary for Lyndon B. Johnson, would be one of my professors, and definitely got some other good professors in a number of disciplines and all along those lines. I was not prepared. I would love to know your thoughts about that for the cold and everything, because like I said, I come from North Carolina, and I remember the first time that there was a blizzard and all along those lines, or even just a snowstorm. You know, here in the South, if we have a snowstorm, schools close down and they don't really open till much later. I remember one time, literally as a student, going to sleep, waking up and told that there was no school because there had been cancellations because of the snowstorm. And I think that when I looked outside, there was no snow to be seen. So whatever snow had been threatened had also melted and all along those lines. And the other story that I remember from that experience was literally my parents had sent me a down jacket. I think it was a white down jacket to keep me warm and everything. And I remember that blizzard taking place, and I'm looking outside like we ain't got school today. And my friends that were from the Northeast and the Midwest were looking at me, and we had those big walk-in closets, and they were like, "You see that coat your mom sent you? There's a reason she sent it. Throw it on and start marching to class because there is no cancellation of classes because of something like a snowstorm or something mild in the way that they considered it." And I'm sure you had similar experiences when you moved from Louisiana to Michigan. So I just wanted your thoughts about that adaptation from the weather, because I know it took me a while, and to be perfectly honest, I haven't been back since graduating in December of '84. So we're almost coming up on 40 years, and they have not seen me return to the Midwest, even though I'm probably due, way overdue for a trip back.
Yes, Mark, change always involve adjustment. I had the same issues. I had seen snow probably the first time when I was about 13, and it melted a few hours later. So that was the biggest adjustment, snow. And also the language and the people. They wanted to know about Louisiana, and I got at least three just very, I call it silly questions. Do you like hot sauce? Do you guys have alligators walking in the street? And asking me about voodoo. So it was kind of hilarious, but I explained to them, even though I'm from Louisiana, I do not like hot sauce. Um, I occasionally see alligators if I'm going to New Orleans, maybe one out in the, Bonnie Spillway or something. But Also, I told him I didn't know anything about voodoo. So it's always those questions, just kind of the stereotypes. Oh, it's so hot and this and that. So I made the adjustment. I never liked snow, but I did get used to it and was able to drive in it. Also, the accent, I had to pick up the language. Why you say cold drink or why you say you want a root beer? We call it pop here. So it's always an adjustment.
No, it's
And yes,
yeah, it's definitely an adjustment. I hear you, and I was actually thinking that you were mentioning the alligators, and I imagine that they're in Louisiana. Alligators are probably a protected animal and all in that space because I know here in North Carolina we have geese, and sometimes the geese are actually in a pond not that far from our airport, the Raleigh Durham Airport, and some people that are going to catch a plane get frustrated because they have to wait for the geese to cross the street because the geese here in North Carolina are a protected animal. So you're not supposed to run across them. Of course, you can beep at them and hopefully they won't be too stubborn and they'll get across the street faster so you can actually make your connection. And I imagine something similar happens with alligators there in Louisiana. And as one that hasn't been to Louisiana, I'm not sure, but I'm thinking that they're probably protected animals. And if they're walking across the street in New Orleans and you're not doing something that might be considered against the rules, like trying to make them dinner and everything, that you might have to wait for them to cross the road as well. But I don't know if that's the case or not.
I never see them cross the road, but when they had the last hurricane here, I did see one in the street, but unfortunately he was dead. A car had hit it. And I wanted to take a picture and send it back to my friend in Michigan and say, see, one is in the street. But yes, they do serve them here in the restaurants. I've never eaten alligator, but people say it's delicious. So I never
Yeah,
had it. I just can't imagine eating alligator, but
yeah,
hey.
yeah. I never had alligator either, and I don't think that I've ever had any alligator shoes. Even though I understand that that is a very popular thing in an alligator belt, so I do know that they are used for a lot of different things. Your aunt, as I was reading your page on your bio and everything, had a very interesting quote and everything, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about that because you have gone back to Louisiana and all in that space. But apparently, after you had been up there for a couple of months, your aunt asked you, why would you want to go back south and work a minimum wage job when there are so many opportunities in Detroit? And I'm thinking at the time that you were there, Detroit was very still active in the car industry and a number of other industries as well, even though we know that that part of the economy is struggling in this particular time and everything. But I was just wondering what your answer was to her and all along those lines.
I told her I was getting a little seasoned and I wanted to be closer to my family. My mother passed in 2008. So I'm thinking, it's just the two of us in Michigan. I want to be close to them. And of course, she was telling me, why you want to go back. Some of my friends too saying, oh, it's prejudice there. You're not going to make as much money. The total opposite happened. You have to do what's best for you in life. Just like I came there to seek a better life, I just wanted to relocate again. So I moved back, been back a little over 10 years. Not only have I made more money, I have my own company now, and I met my husband. Never been married, got married for the first time, over 50. So change is good. You never know what's on the other side of moving on until you do it. It wasn't as bad as they said it was. So, um, my advice to people, do what's best for you. People don't always know what you want in life. You have to do you, as they say.
No, definitely. I know that definitely says that when you went to Detroit, you didn't have that many great clothes. And matter of fact, I think you said they were even raggedy and that you were doing it in a Foot Locker on a Greyhound bus. I'm trying to remember if Greyhound still even exists and everything because I know the bus industry has gone through some different problems as well. So maybe with our audience, if you can share your thoughts about going into a new area and going into that with maybe not as strong of the material things that you would have liked to carry with you.
Right. I bought a lot of old clothes with me. And like my aunt always said, you can't wear that here. You got all those summer clothes. So she was very good with helping me buy new things. No longer have the Foot Locker. Don't even know if they exist anymore. But it's with anything, you have to get rid of some old stuff. But, we made it work. You know, Everything again is an adjustment.
No, definitely it's an adjustment and everything. As you were saying, that I was actually thinking about the other time that I moved away and all along those lines. And this is coming to the other part of your narrative as well. But I mentioned the college experience, and I, for the most part, enjoyed my college experience those many, many years ago and everything. But probably about 10 years later, I went down to Boca Raton. And part of that down in Florida was that I wanted to get closer to a lady love interest that I had and everything. Learned that Miami and Boca Raton are not as close as I thought they were, because I was thinking I was literally in their backyard and that we could court each other and who knows, maybe even do a life together. And then I found out that I wasn't as close as I thought I was. But the other thing that I ran across in that environment was a gentleman that liked being the big fish in the small pond and wasn't necessarily supportive of other minorities and others that were in the minority community, because women actually make up the majority of the population, if I'm remembering my statistics correctly and everything. But there are a lot of hardships in corporate America with being a woman. But I know that he wasn't all that supportive of the women and definitely wasn't supportive of the other few minorities that were working for the company at that time. So I was just wondering, is that something that you ever had to deal with both as a professor, because I know that you've done work at Davenport, USA, as well as in your healthcare field, where sometimes our own can be our worst enemies?
Yes, I experienced that, and I was fortunate enough to stand up for myself and was always successful with the outcome. I had people, on both sides questioning my authority. What's your background? One manager wanted to know, did I have a degree when I first started out in management? So I just, I had all of those issues, but I overcame that. I learned how to stand up for myself and just, by being educated, I was able to challenge some things and, move on. I didn't let it, stop me. But I recently gave up a 30-year career in healthcare because I had gotten tired of it. It had become stagnant, no growth going on. Everyone was talking about the great resignation, but I had a revelation that it was time to go, time to move on from healthcare. So again, sometimes the change is good. You want to blame other people, but you can't let other people control your life. I'm like, you don't even like this job. You're tired of it. What do you like doing? And that's when I discovered, you know what? You always encouraging people, telling them to stand up, try to do more. And it's been over 3 years ago, and I have my own business and just going a new route now.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense and everything. One of the other things that I'm oftentimes fascinated by at all in that space is that Horatio Alger story of those that have made it up from the bootstraps and that definitely have done a lot of things. There are a number of people, both in the African American community as well as other communities, that literally started from nothing and became major successes. So, whereas you are talking to folks there in Louisiana, and even when you're talking to folks there in Detroit in the past and everything, what kind of advice do you give to those that are feeling that they are stuck in the poverty cycle? Because we do know that that is a cycle, and a lot of people feel that they will never get out of poverty because their mother was in poverty, their grandmother was in poverty, and we can go back several other generations. So, what are some of the advices that you give to people to get them out of that poverty mindset?
Never give up and never lose hope. Even though I was poor, again, I was able to look up to my aunt that came down to visit us. She always had nice clothes, and she would say, "Why don't y'all come to Detroit? It's much better in Detroit." And I took a hold of that. My sisters didn't want to leave out of town. I did. So I would tell people, don't lose hope. As a little girl, I would say, one day I'm going to have a house, and one day I'm going to have a car. And I would see a certain type of car when I was young. It wasn't so much of the car, but I remember someone saying, "That's a real expensive car. You would never have that." And that stuck with me years and years later. It took about 25 years, but I bought that particular car. What I heard was that person saying, "You could never have that in life." Don't let anyone say what you can or cannot have. If you work hard enough, get educated, know your rights, you know, whatever is for you, I think you would eventually succeed if you don't get discouraged and give up. You're going to have some challenges. and setbacks, but just keep at it. Success is not overnight. So that's what I would tell them. Don't give up. Don't lose hope. Don't listen to people saying you will never be able to have money. You'll never be able to get married. Whatever you want, really go after it. Go after it hard, as they say.
No, that makes a lot of sense. You know, we've had a lot of folks in the society that have become entrepreneurs and are using entrepreneurship as a way to get out of poverty and all along those lines. So I was just wondering your thoughts, one, about entrepreneurship, but also do you feel that education is the key to getting out of poverty, or do you feel that you can get out of poverty without necessarily going to college or community college or even joining the military? So I was wondering your take on the importance of education and also the notion of so many people are starting entrepreneurial businesses. We definitely saw that during the pandemic, and it seems to be even continuing now that the pandemic seems to be slowly ending and all in that space. But I was just wondering your thoughts, one, about education, and two, about entrepreneurship.
About education, a college degree is good, but it's not the only education. I would say skills trades. They need to push that more in high school. My handyman, I talked about him in the book I wrote. He makes over $100,000. He did not graduate from high school. He did go back and get his GED, but he's a carpenter and he does all type carpentry work. And again, if you could get a good trade, that's education. It doesn't have to be a 4 year degree, even though I have my master's degree, but I also have some certifications that did not require a master's degree or a bachelor's degree. So education will never hurt you. It only can help you. But there are people in business for themselves, even lawn care. That's a big, expensive, lucrative business down here. The grass look like it grows, like literally every day. In Michigan, we didn't have to cut the grass as regular, but here, when it rains, it's every week they want to come and cut the grass now. So that's a lucrative business. Just, want something better. That was me. I saw us always getting food stamps, waiting on someone to give us something. And I said, as a little girl, one day I'm going to have this. Just, don't quit dreaming. Again, it's not going to happen overnight. You have to be around the right people that's going to push you. And everybody may not have an Aunt Gladys, but it may be a teacher, someone that can help you, but always want to do better. And don't feel you have to stay in whatever situation. If it's a life of crime, I talk about one individual that, got in some trouble. And that was like 50 years ago when he told me the story and he became successful. He said, "Oh, no, that wasn't for me." So never lose hope. Look for positive role models, and you can't go wrong in life.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Definitely got to have those role models. Definitely want to hear your thoughts about entrepreneurship as well. But before I get to that, what is some of your thoughts about those that are feeling that they have gotten into that chain of welfare connectivity and that whole poverty mindset that I alluded to earlier? Because I do know some folks that are feeling that their parents were on the welfare or struggling, that their grandparents were struggling, and that they are destined for a life of struggle as well. Because even here in North Carolina, I have run across some folks that are feeling that they can't quite escape the conditions that they were born into. And it sounds to me like you have definitely found a way to escape those conditions. So, what are some of the advices that you give to people that are feeling that they can't escape those things that they were born into?
I think you can escape. Again, my mother, she at first didn't want me to go to Detroit. And I said, you know what? My aunt will be able to help me. And she realized that. She said, yeah, you need to go. Just make sure you come back. And I would always come back to visit, but she wanted me to come back to stay. So, again, if you just can see a way out, don't lose hope. We were always on food stamps, moving all the time because, we didn't have money to pay the rent, but I just knew I wanted something better. If you could find one person, one positive person that can say, yes, you could do that. I had teachers that would encourage me, but still, you need finances also. But just not to give up. It may take a while because someone asked me, well, what if you would have stayed down south? I still don't think I would have been in poverty because I just wanted something better, didn't like the handouts. So that's what you have to do. Just Don't lose hope. When you if you lose hope, then you will stay where you are. If people you just say, "Oh, you'll never be anything." I never believed that.
What do you say? Because we've had some folks on the network and other places, meaning Pod TV, that talk about this. But what do you say to those that are concerned that there are too many handouts for those that are in the poor kind of environment and all along those lines? Because I do know that there is a train of thought out there that we have become too welfare dependent in a lot of the parts of our world and everything. But as one that has escaped that poverty, is that a legitimate complaint? And do you think that some people are too dependent on the government dole?
I wouldn't think so. I didn't say this earlier, but you have to change your mindset. I had to get rid of that poverty mindset because once I did get a degree, I ran up a lot of credit card debt because I did have the attitude, oh, I grew up poor. I'm going to buy me whatever I want. And that got me almost back into poverty because I thought I would become homeless one day because everyone say you have to have 6 months to a year savings, and I didn't have anything. Again, I started going to seminars on financial literacy that was put on by my church, some of the church members, and I got involved with that. So again, if you find someone that you can pattern your life off after, that been where you're trying to go, you can get out of your situation. I was broke when I started going to those seminars. People would tell me about books to read, The Millionaire Mind. I read those books, and people don't get rich by just talking about it or, quoting some affirmation. You have to take steps. So once you learn the steps, I do not believe a person will stay in poverty if they really want to get out.
That makes a lot of sense. I don't know if you've ever read the book, but he is one of our frequent contributors here on the network. It's been at least a month or two since he's been on, but he does come on regularly. But I don't know if one of the books that you read was a book called The Millionaire Next Door. And if it is, if you had any thoughts about that book, because I do know that Bill Danko has been a regular here on the network and is oftentimes talking about some of the lessons that he learned. So I didn't know one of you had read that book and what some of the other books that you have read that might inspire others.
That is one of them. And the first one I read was The Millionaire Mind because growing up in poverty, I always thought we were going to win the publishing clearinghouse. That was big back then. Oh, if I could just win that. No, once I read the book and got some information, they were saying the fields that millionaires could be in, like real estate, doctor, lawyer. So I knew education was important. It's been a while since I read those books, but I have probably all of the millionaire series. And I just kind of got a hold of that. No, no one is just going to give you something. Oh, someone is going to walk up to me and give me $1 million. That would be nice, but it's not going to happen. So it's basically, like I say, if you can go in business for yourself, get an education or get some skilled trade or some other skill, that you can make it. Look at all of the basketball players and the singers. If you have a talent and, get around the people that you want to be like, I think you can make it. It may not be in 2 or 3 years, but I can't see anyone staying in the situation they're in if they really want to do better and surround themselves with positive role models. I didn't have a
No,
lot growing up, but I did have one.
no, and I definitely want to hear about that role model. I think you mentioned the aunt being one of them, and there might have been others as well. But one of the things that our one of our founders of this network talks about, and you kind of alluded to it earlier, is the need for fiscal literacy. And he is oftentimes frustrated. Actually, both founders are frustrated that we don't see enough of that education in our school system. So I was wondering your thoughts about that and what some of the lessons that you have learned from a financial standpoint that you wish you had learned at a much younger age, because I know that they would love to see it if we were teaching kids about allowances and how to manage money as early as our grade school level and all in that space, because there are even college kids that don't know how to manage their money. We know that from the amount of kids that are in debt because of credit cards and other things. But as one that has gone from poverty to prosperity, what are some of your thoughts around the need for financial health and financial literacy in our school systems?
Listen to those that have gone before you. I actually joined a church that would talk about finances. And, a lot of people want to criticize, mega churches. But the church that I went to, the pastor would talk about money, saying you need to get out of debt. And I was actually at a singles conference way back, and I put in the question kind of to be biggity, as we say here. I say he's not going to answer this. So I asked what it meant to be debt free. And basically, he said, you cannot spend more than you earn. And, all of the credit card debts have a savings. So I caught a hold of that over 30 years ago. And I said, one day I'm going to get rid of all of these credit cards. I had 20 at one time. So eventually I got rid of all of the credit cards. I only use one, pay it off at the end of the month. Just learning about finances. You can't, I didn't know anything about money but to spend it. So that church, that pastor taught, different classes, had different experts coming in, and I attended those and kind of got involved with some of the people, the books that you mentioned. If they would teach it in, elementary school, that would be great because, people just think, money is just out there because maybe someone gave them money all the time. But you really need to understand money is neither good or bad, but it's important in life and you need to know how to handle it. And that including not spending every penny that you make.
No, that makes a lot of sense and everything in that space. I can definitely understand where you are coming from in that sense. And we don't have enough folks that are paying attention to the financial lane as much as they should and all in that space. I'm glad that you brought that up and it is a important aspect of what we need to do more of and all along those lines. What is one of the first lessons that you learned in terms of your financial benefit and financial lanes that is still resonating with you today? I know that some people will mention that whole notion of what you should spend on your housing. I think it's less than 25% if you can help it or something along those lines. But I may be having the figure not exactly right, but I know it is definitely not supposed to be the majority of what you bring in and all in that space, even though a number of folks are spending the majority of what they bring in their housing. But what are some of the financial lessons that you learned at a early age?
I think I learned the one about the housing. I think it said 30% house note and car note. But again, that's what people want to do. I want a big house. I want a big car. I never got that luxury car that people told me I would never get until like 30 years later when I could afford it. So again, just being aware, you can't keep up with the Joneses, whoever these people are, because you'll never get out of your situation. But you just can't spend more than you make, and I always say on a lot of material things because they depreciate. The purses, why would I want a $2,000 handbag? I'd rather spend that on my education because I'm still studying, to be with the motivational speaker and different things like that. So we have to value what's not going to depreciate. All of these clothes and everything has no value other than, a short-term value. They will run out eventually, but long-term, your education, invest in that. Have a savings account, as they say. So if anything happened, I was living from paycheck to paycheck at one point, but just get out of that poverty mindset. And again, around yourself with people that know what they're doing, not just telling you to quote this and say this, and you'll be rich. That's not going to happen.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Definitely have to do the action behind it. One of the other things that you mentioned, and there's another part of your narrative that I'm interested to get to as well. But one of the things that you mentioned a minute ago was the notion of starting at late in life. I am just turned 61 about 2 weeks and 2 days ago, and all in that space, and am still in the single lane. But I do know that some people start later than others, and it sounds like you got married well into your uh, late 40s or early 50s. But what message do you give to those that are feeling that the best of their days have gone by and that there are no chances of either entrepreneurial or love or any of the other things that people desire in life as they head off into the sunset years, as some people call them, and all in that space? But it sounds to me like you have a very positive attitude, which is an important thing to have. And it sounds like you found Mr. Right, as the old saying goes, at a fairly late part in your life. So, what advice do you give to those that are going like, don't have that, so maybe it's not going to happen? And sometimes as you get older, the part of what goes with that is eliminated because as you are an older spouse, the chance of having kids is less unless you are marrying somebody that has already got kids or that you are going to adopt or something along those lines. But what advice would you give to those that are in their sunset years or heading into the sunset years?
Never give up your mature years. With all of the negativity that I was given about returning down south, several people said, Sylvia, you never know. You may meet your spouse. So that's what happened. I was looking for a church home and never heard of this church, but I Googled it and kind of got some background information. I love serving. I volunteered a lot at my other church in Michigan. So I went to this church and they asked me about being on the usher board. And I said yes. Little did I know that now my husband, they asked him the same thing. He was just coming back to Louisiana also. Didn't know him, didn't know anything about him. He happened to see me on the usher board and asked someone about me. And that was it. We started talking. We dated a couple of years and then we got married. Don't give up hope. I never had a lot of negativity like some people say, well, all men are this. All men aren't bad. You just have to keep an open mind. I would always say I would meet someone and my friends would laugh. Oh, when you get older, it's hard. I never believed that. And like I say, we got married and we've been coming up on 6 years. So believe in yourself. Whatever you want, just say, hey, I'm going to receive that. And don't, what they used to say in the singles group, don't ask for nothing that you're not. I would always say when I was younger, because I grew up in poverty, I want some man with money. No, I rather have my own money. So I didn't have that issue. Like, I want whoever want me. You have to change your mindset about things. Believe in yourself and don't worry about what people say. The same way about a career. People tell me, you like to talk a lot. You're always giving advice. So the job that I hated, I'm like, you know what? It's time to move on. I'm going to start something new. I want to be a motivational speaker. I'm always telling people, you can do better. Don't let that bother you. So you never know your passion, but it starts with believing in yourself. Get rid of the negativity because all people are not bad. It's okay to want someone, but you can't keep saying yes and no at the same time. Just, be open about it and you never know who and when, you'll meet that person.
No, that makes a lot of sense. You mentioned it a couple of times with the mega church and everything, but how important is the faith walk in your life and everything? And also, how important do you feel it is to have a well integrated health regimen? Because I'm one of those people that believes that we need to be mentally healthy, physically healthy, emotionally healthy, and I would even argue spiritually healthy as well. But I was just wondering how important is the faith walk and how integrated do you feel that faith walk needs to be into your overall health picture?
I think it's very important. Again, when I went to Michigan, I first attended the church that my aunt went to. It was kind of a traditional church. I call it kind of like a fire and brimstone church. But then I went to a mega church and, learned a lot of things. And no church is perfect. That's not what I'm saying. But it had a different spin on, yes, you need to be financial healthy. They would bring in speakers that talked about health. So it was kind of like an overall picture of different topics. And I agree with you. I think we need financial health, uh, mental health, wellness, and the whole thing. You can't just, quote scriptures and be religious, but you got to walk the walk too. So faith has always been important. Even when I was a little girl, I would pray and say, I want to do better. I want to have this in life. And I think God looks at your heart. People, have all kind of different, religions and faith and what do you believe? If you believe in God, you don't criticize other people. God is love and faith is very important to me.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I know one of the complaints that people have, not with all, but with some mega churches, is this notion of prosperity ministry, which is a lot of times that the ministers and the institutions are making a decent amount of money, but they aren't always supporting the grassroots participants within the church and all along those lines. And I know that actually a family friend, Reverend Barber, has actually mentioned that because I think it's part of one of his regular sermons. He talks about the fact that they did a study of thousands of sermons, might have been even tens of thousands of sermons, and that even though the Bible talks about helping the least of these, a lot of the ministers in these sermons weren't even addressing that topic, even though it is a very prevalent topic within the Bible. So, as one of the faith community, I was wondering your thoughts around that. Is that something that our churches can do better at? And do you feel that your church is doing a good job? And if so, what are some of the examples that you are seeing of them helping out the greater community?
I agree. You have to look at the overall picture. I like churches that are well rounded, not just ask for money, but I look at what they're doing. And I have gone to several that do help the needy. When I was in Michigan, I really enjoyed, like every year, we would give to certain charities, the women and children. And I do that now in the church I attend to now do that, but I have gone to some. You don't know if they really do that. They may talk about it, but I'm a part of one of the ministries that we do. We do the back to school giveaway. We're having a health fair coming up. So that's kind of what I got used to. A lot of times we donated, but let the community know that you're doing something. That's why a lot of people have negative images of church. Oh, they just want money and what have you. But if they see you doing something, and that's a part of a ministry I want to be in, not that I'm just giving you something every Sunday. I don't mind giving, but what are you doing for the community? Those that are less fortunate, because there were people that came to our aid when we were young, whether it was a certain organization. So you need to give back. The Bible does talk about that, and not just, giving to the pastor. Everyone needs, especially those that are less fortunate.
Yeah, no doubt about that and everything. One of the other things that I know that some of your work revolved around, and actually, Nick Palveda, who I alluded to earlier as one of the founders of the network, is in the pension funding business and all in that space. But they oftentimes talk about healthcare and the rising cost of healthcare and how some of the healthcare things that are going on are problematic. Even here on the network, we talk about that as well, but is one that was in the health space and everything. And I know that you even did some whistleblowing on some of the companies that you were involved in. What is some of your thoughts about how healthcare is being done, and some of the ways that we can improve our healthcare, both here in the United States, and if you have any thoughts about it globally as well?
I think we do need to improve it. That was one of the reasons I was staying in my comfort zone. I needed health care, but healthcare, it was a good field, but unfortunately, there's a lot of fraud in healthcare. And that's one avenue that I got blessed in because I did the right thing and I reported fraud. It was investigated for years and I won a nice reward, but I had to be at the right place doing the right thing. And healthcare is not a political thing. Everyone needs healthcare. Not having healthcare growing up, having to go to a charity hospital, sit for hours when I was sick, and go and get a voucher so we could get back home. So it's very important. Other countries have, various healthcare to help the people better than the U.S. And we need to do more than talk about it than, make it a political thing. But everyone need it, and it should be affordable. I'm paying very expensive healthcare, but I know I need it. So we need to do better. I'm waiting on that Washington person to show up.
Yeah, definitely. I hear what you're saying about that and everything in that space. A lot of people would be afraid to take on a major industry. We know that the pharmaceutical industry, and by that being part of the pharmaceutical in the greater medical industry, is a very powerful tool out there and a very powerful force that exists and all in that lane. So, what motivated you, and how did you have the resolve to want to tackle what you saw as the fraud and corruption within the healthcare system? Because some people see that regularly, even if they're working for major companies, and they don't have the fortitude to do what you did, which is actually take on the big guys and all in that space. So, what about you made you have that kind of fortitude? Because I know a lot of folks are probably seeing a lot of organizations, including some of the organizations that you have worked for, including Blue Cross Blue Shield and others, that they probably would love to talk to, but they don't have the fortitude that you had. So, what about your personality gave you that kind of strong fortitude and ability.
I took it personally because I was single at the time, and some of the stuff that I saw that was going on in some parts of fraud is keeping patients longer than they should, or admitting patients that shouldn't be admitted. And I thought about it one day. I'm like, you know what? I'm single. I don't have any kids. That could be me in the hospital and no one to speak up for me. So I just thought about it. And by me being a professor, I did the research after I left the place and contacted some lawyers that fight that kind of healthcare fraud. It took years. So I would always say do the right thing. And by me being educated in that area, I knew what fraud was. It's all kinds of fraud. It was lots of fraud going on during the pandemic. So just be bold and always do the right thing because it affects all of us. Again, we want to talk about healthcare and talk about this and that, but healthcare, everyone should be entitled to it. And fraud makes it even worse. It's $1 billion industry. So the more they try and combat it, the better it'll be for everyone. So I just wanted to do the right thing and I would do it again if I had to.
No, and one of the things that you did, and you kind of mentioned it a couple of times, is you were your own advocate. And I know that one time when my mom, not that long ago, I'd say it was about a year, maybe a year and a half ago, was in the hospital, and I think they were trying to give her some medicine that would be kind of disturbing to her uh, physical health, and then disturbing the stomach, and maybe even having some other adverse effects and everything. She actually spoke up against that and used it as a teaching moment with some of the nurses that were about to do something incorrect and all in that space. So I just wondered, how important do you think it is to be an advocate for yourself, whether you are advocating for something like the fraud, or even if you were to go into a medical situation now and everything, how important do you think it is to be your own advocate as a patient?
I usually try to research things. I had to have my thyroid removed, and I researched it, did a Google search, and just got some literature myself. I had a second opinion, and that's what they said I needed to do. But I kind of knew all about it, knew my options, because if I didn't have it taken out, then again I would, probably could have gotten radiation treatment, and that causes issues. But just kind of research, ask someone, that may be in the health field, or just do research on your own. It's all kind of medical books out. And I decided to have it taken out, but the doctor, he gave me the option saying this and that could happen. But I had minimum effects, side effects. I lost my voice for maybe, a few days, but it takes time. But always try to research what's going on. Don't just take the first opinion and say, oh, I have to have that done. I talked to my doctor and I got a second opinion, but that was the one of my options to either get it done, or you still getting having issues eating and all of these symptoms. But just try to be your own advocate and get educated on the whatever it is you need to have done. Get a second opinion, third opinion if possible.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Everything. Matter of fact, there's a commercial that I keep seeing on television now, which is actually just saying that, because I think the guy's getting ready to rip down a wall. It might be for an insurance company, and another person they're getting ready to tear down something else, and they literally say just what you say within the commercial, which is that they want a second opinion before they actually make this radical decision and everything. Because it's actually quite a hilarious commercial, and I wish I could remember what the product is for, but I know that I've seen it a number of times on our regular television and all in that space. And I think it's for an insurance company, but don't quote me on that and all
Yeah.
along those lines. But it's definitely a notion of getting that second opinion. You are also a motivational speaker, and there are a lot of motivational speakers that are out there. So, what drew you into motivational speaking, and what is the thing that you think makes you a stronger motivational speaker than others that might cause somebody to want to get you to speak and everything? So if you were to give a pitch about your motivational speaking, because I know that a person that does a show here on the network and everything, Barbara H. Smith, is a motivational speaker as well, and she oftentimes talks about how she gets people to give their different narrative other than what people get, because a lot of times the narrative is they will read, or the MC will read literally what is on the page, the little bio and everything, and she tries to do something that is a little bit unique. So I know she talks about being an engineer at age 7, a like a race car driver, I think at age 9, and there's a third field, but then she gives the narrative as to how she was in each of these cases. I think in one case she built like a drove a car that was left unattended or something along those lines, and then she built something at a very young age, and that was the engineer narrative and everything. So if you were to do an elevated speech for your own motivational speaking, how would you get somebody to want to hear you as a motivational speaker?
I'm the self proclaimed moving on expert. I know a lot about moving on. I moved from my small city to the big city, and sometimes you do need to move on in life to move up. I moved out of poverty, I moved out of singleness, and I moved out of working for others, forming my own company, Sylvia O'Connor Soar. And Soar means something different, but for me, it means Sylvia O'Connor, always rich. So I'm not going back to poverty. I've moved on. So I know something about moving on. I'm the moving on expert.
Sounds great. I like that pitch and everything. There used to be a very popular TV show that had a similar kind of theme and everything. So it sounds to some degree like you are a modern day version of the Jeffersons. And I understand the Jeffersons was an entire family, but as I recall the show and the theme song, that is literally what they just said was
Oh,
moving on up and all
yeah.
into that space. So it sounds like you have become a modern day version of what the Jeffersons were and everything. Is that a fair assessment?
Oh, I like that, Mark. I didn't think of that. Yes, I moved from the shotgun houses to my own house. And also the car that they said, oh, that's very expensive. You'll never get. I have one. And it wasn't the car, it was the concept of someone telling me, oh, that is very expensive. You can never have that. Don't let people tell you what you can't have. How
No, that
bad do you want it?
yeah, how bad do you want it and what you would go in that space? That actually raises something that we've talked about on this network several times, but there is this kind of self-defeating mindset that a lot of people have and everything. That's that notion of the inner critic and the outer critic and that kind of self-defeating belief. I know that I've had that even with some jobs that I've gone after and all along those lines. So I'm imagining that if you were climbing up, there were folks that were telling you all the reasons that you couldn't have the husband that you now have and that you couldn't have the job and the career that you now have and everything. And I'm sure there were times that even your own inner voice was telling you all the reasons that it wouldn't work as well. So, what is some of the advice that you give to others to quiet those voices, both inside and outside? Because I do know that sometimes those inner voices, as well as our outer critics, can be detrimental. But I was wondering how you deal with that and how you address that.
I usually do affirmations, find good affirmations and good scriptures, and I put them on my mirror in the bathroom or somewhere else, and I do recite them and I believe them. A lot of people just say things because it sounds good. I believe them. And one good thing about being single, I could just say whatever I want living alone, and I would walk through the house saying, thank you, Lord, for my money. This fraud case is going to be successful. It took 6 years, but it happened. You have to believe. Don't just, say things because, someone say this. I actually believed it and I got everything so far that I've been believing for. So, just believe in yourself. Don't say anything you think you can't get, but be realistic. And I said, one day I'm going to have this, I'm going to have that. Everything has come to pass.
I know one of the things you talk about within the book is that, and this is something that people have a hard time with because a lot of times they want to blame outside forces and outside things that are going on in the life. And I know that one of the things that you say in the book that you will understand is that you are 100% responsible for your life. So, what does that mean to you? And are there times that there are other forces that are causing you not to be all responsible for your life and all in that space? Because I heard that quote and I'm going like, that sounds good in the theory, but then there are outside forces that can impact our lives as well. So what do you mean when you say that we as individuals are 100% responsible for our own lives?
I mean with things that you can control. When my aunt let me move in with her, she told me, "Look, you came here to make a better life. You didn't come up here to be worrying about boys or acting a fool." That's what she told me. And at first, I thought she was being harsh because I would look at some dance show and she would say, "Oh, yeah, no, that," almost like in my words, "You're going to hell for looking at that." So I picked my battles. I didn't argue with her because I knew she was able to help me. So things that's in your control, all I had to do was, be respectful to her. I didn't have to agree with everything because I said one day I'm not going to be staying with her. So there are some things you may can't control, but things that you have control over. She brought me there and I kept saying, I'm going to leave college with a degree. They would always say, "Oh, you old fashioned. You don't like to hang out." I didn't care because I wanted a better life. And they say that about me sometime today. "Oh, you don't like going places or doing this." I'm studying a lot for a whole new career. So just do you, because at the end of the day, you are responsible for things that you have control over. If I can't control certain things, then that's it. Like the job I was complaining about, and my husband say, "I'm tired of you talking about that job. Why don't you just quit?" I quit a job when I was living from paycheck to paycheck. Everybody can't do that. They may have kids to feed. It was just me. And I'm thinking, okay, I could miss a few meals. When I got that attitude that I'm going to quit and trust God, I got another job years ago, 3 weeks after I quit one. So sometimes you have to step out on faith. Like I say, that may not be for everybody. In my case, I just had to worry about feeding me. But things you have control over, go for it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Everything. Another thing you talk about, which I know sometimes folks are not as some open to this and everything, but you mentioned that it is not too late to achieve your dreams. So, what does that mean to you? Because, like I said, I know that I think it was 50s is when you married this gentleman, and all along these lines. And it definitely sounds like you have had multiple careers, including the newer
Yes.
career. But what does that mean to you that it's never too late to achieve the dreams, whatever those dreams are?
One of them was a house because I've always lived in an apartment, and I would always hear people say, "Oh, you just, houses that take 30 years to pay them off." Well, not necessarily. I knew people that paid them off in 10 or, 15 or what have you. But even something as home ownership, a lot of people, I was a first time home buyer, so I was like, "Oh, my house note was way cheaper than the apartment." So research things for yourself. Just don't listen to people saying, "Oh, you can't do this and you can't do that." It was never too late, for a house, to meet someone. I have know people much older than me say, "I would like to meet someone," but they seem like they're ashamed about it because people say, "Oh, she's that age, he's that age." They usually don't say it about the men too much, but usually the women now. But I tell people it's someone for everyone. You hear of people on the news, I love those stories, getting married at 80 and 90, or going back to school at, to get their high school diploma at 90, or graduating from college. So nothing is impossible. You just have to believe you can do it if you really want to do it. One thing with my aunt, she's in her 90s. She said she regret not getting her education even when she had a chance. She said, "Well, I needed to make a living," and she started night school, but she didn't finish. So sometimes, again, we can't blame everything on our circumstances.
No, not at all. It is actually you bring that up and everything because I ran into a family friend. It's actually a closer friend of my brother than myself and everything. But we've been involved in fantasy football together and other things for a while. And this gentleman was actually just doing what you said because of that circle of friends. My brother and his friend circle. There was a small group of about 8 to 10, roughly, if I was to guesstimate the size. This particular gentleman is the only one that hadn't got the degree yet and everything, but he's been working a multitude of jobs, and one of those jobs actually helped him go back to school. But his daughter is about to attend Baylor over there in Texas, if I remember correctly, where Baylor is
Yes.
located at, and all in that space. But as part of his serving as a role model for her, he wanted to go back and use the money he got. I think in this case, it might have been from his Amazon job or the Blue Cross Blue Shield job, because, like I said, he has a multitude of jobs. And in order to complete the degree, to serve as a positive role model, that he would have his degree before she completes her degree, as she is about to be a student there at that university. So when he told me that, that really was an inspiring story that Brother Al gave me and everything. But definitely that's something that I am glad to hear, people that are, like you said, going back and completing a mission that might not have been completed in the beginning, because sometimes it takes a while to complete the lessons and all along those lines. Along those same lines, and another thing that I was curious about with your own thoughts and some of the things that you talk about in your book and all along those lines, is there's another, I guess it's one of the principles that you refer to, and it's something that I think that we have a hard time with. We have a hard time with it in relationships. We have a hard time with it in jobs. We have a hard time with it in a number of other things. But it seems to me that you are saying it can be a gift and everything. So I was wondering if you could talk about the gifts of goodbye, because I know a lot of times we hold on to things, including past relationships. We even hold on to jobs probably longer than we need to, because we're afraid to say goodbye to them and move on to the next opportunity. But that's what I would guess the gifts of goodbye is about, because you talk about the power of that gift and everything. But I know a lot of people that have held on to things, including things that were long gone, like the other party in the relationship might have been long gone, but they're still holding on to the hurt or the connection before moving on to the next relationship that could be beneficial. And we've definitely seen people hold on to jobs forever, even though that real lucrative job might be further down the road and all in that space. But share a little bit about your thoughts about the gifts of goodbye. And do I have the concept correct?
Yes, you do. Uh, Perfect example was the job. I was holding on to it, and I had the whistleblower award at that time. I was actually holding on to it because of the health insurance, but I was making myself sick. I talked about that job all the time. My husband was getting tired of me talking about the job. Um, I didn't like the job. It was a lot of changes. You never could do anything right. Every time you look around, it's more, more, more. And instead of blaming them, it's like, look, you quit a job when you didn't even have anything. You can quit this one. And it dawned on me, it's time to give the gift of goodbye. People, places, and things are in our lives for a season and a reason, or I heard someone say a lesson or a blessing. It's the same way about churches. I've just given an example. Oh, my mother went here. My grandmother went here. You're not maybe learning anything, or, it's the same thing. Everybody's getting over, getting rich except you. It's okay to move on. It doesn't have to be anything negative. I hate them. I don't like them. It's just I learned something new. It's time for me to step up to a new season in my life. In the same way with friends, I mentioned one lady. We were friends. It's my husband say, "Oh, it looked like you wouldn't give up on her that easy." But I try to connect, reconnect. I don't even remember how we lost contact, but she made the comment, "My number been the same all of this time." My mother used to say, "Don't run behind people that don't want to be bothered." I just figured it was time to say goodbye. Don't reach out anymore. You tried. So it's hard, you miss the people, but God can bring new people into your life. People want to say, "Oh, you don't like her anymore. What happened?" It's time to move on. Like I say, move on to something different. You never know how you'll be blessed, meet new people, new opportunities. So yes, that is the gift of goodbye.
Sounds like it and everything. What advice would you give to entrepreneurs? Because, like I alluded to earlier, there are a number of entrepreneurs that are out there. We saw a number of people that were starting their entrepreneurial journey during the pandemic. Now, some of them were starting what some people call solopreneur careers, meaning that they don't have to hire anybody other than themselves and all in that space, and are running it as a one man shop. And there are other entrepreneurial jobs that are the small business model. So you do have a staff and others that you are working with. And in some cases, it may be fellow family members and all along those lines. But what advice, as so many people are thinking that they want to be entrepreneurs in 2023, that you would give, since you are an entrepreneur yourself and now with your own business? So, what advice would you give to fellow entrepreneurs?
I would learn the business. get lots of training. That's what I'm doing, investing. I've spent lots of money working with motivational speakers, an accountant, the legal side of it. Um, it's a lot involved, but again, surround yourself around people that's been where you're trying to go. I would say the key thing is education. I ordered books on an LLC, got with my accountant, things that I can write off, I can't write off, just knowing the business so you won't get in trouble legally, whether you're solo partner or with someone else. So a lot of times we want, okay, I got my own business, but you have to learn the business.
No, definitely. We're going to take just a brief commercial break. Got a couple of PSAs that I want to get to, including one about a food product from Can Do Spices and all along those lines. But then when we come back, and we'll probably have about another 25 minutes or so to go after that and everything, I'd love to hear about the 7 principles, because I know the book is entitled The 7 Principles that are existing and all along those lines. So definitely want to hear about those 7 principles that are 9 principles. It said 7. It's
Yes.
actually 9 principles to move from poverty to prosperity, living the abundant life. So I almost shortchanged you some principles, but definitely would like to come back and learn about these 9 principles. And then at the end, we'll definitely find out how people can reach you. And there is something that I asked all guests, which is basically a notion of a positive message for the global community and all along those lines. But we'll get to that after this quick break, and we learn more about the some businesses that are existing that are helping us with some of the things that we are doing. So we'll start off with Can Do Spices and come back maybe with the voiceover lady as well. And there might even be one about a financial space. So about 2 or 3 of them. They're all relatively short. And then we'll come back with the ending of our conversation with Miss O'Connor. And I hope you're enjoying the conversation as much as I am. But we'll be back with her very shortly.
You know how people love to enjoy food and don't understand how to flavor their food or how to replicate a meal? They're interested in supplements but don't know where to begin? Well, what I do is I take the guesswork out of enjoying flavor and wellness with my flavorful spice blends so that they can create delicious meals with healing benefits. Can Do Spice was created to help cooks at any level enjoy healing through food. Every spice blend was designed to give added health benefits of natural herbs. Every blend is complete. There's no need to add any additional spice for a delicious meal. Saving you time and money while adding supplements to your meals can be both tasty and fun. My earliest memories in the kitchen began with my father, Kenny Can Do Bond, so it was fitting that I would name this line after him. I have always looked to natural remedies to supplement the body, and I found myself hiding herbs and minerals in foods for my family. That's when it hit me. Everyone needs Can Do Spice. Everyone should be having this. It's an exclusive brand for cooks at any level who want to create flavorful dishes with healing benefits that can satisfy the body and soul. Add a little spice to your life. Give Can Do Spice a try.
The only trick you need to save time and money is to shop at Aldi. Aldi. Shop differently. Limitless length plus volume. Sensational from every angle. New Lash Sensational Sky High Mascara. Only from Maybelline, New York. Everything that touches your baby should be this comforting. Pamper Swaddlers. The #1 choice of hospitals is 2 times softer. All right, Trivago. Find me a hotel somewhere in Thailand where I can wake up with a view of the ocean. Awesome. The future. It's impossible to see. And when it's finally here, it might not be what you'd expect. It might just be better. Introducing Luxury Electric. Introducing Lucid Air. We're for those who love to discover, who don't need to travel to find something new, and who know when you spend less, you can discover even more at TJ Maxx and Marshalls. Smooth, velvety chocolate wrapped in precious gold. Ferrero Rocher.
At Shirley Lou and Associates, powered by First Financial Security, our mission is to help all people achieve financial security and peace of mind.
My team and I are here to help you reach financial security tomorrow and for generations to come.
She is one of the most sincere and compassionate people that I will ever meet in my life. She sincerely wants to build a legacy where no young woman that she meets is left destitute, that they are able to be self-sufficient, to provide for a family in an emergency, to build for their future and for future generations.
At Shirley Lewin Associates, we are changing the face of insurance and retirement plans. Our mission is to lead, empower, and grow. We are the home of tax-free retirement. We provide comprehensive planning for businesses, rollovers for retirees, and individual personal financial planning.
I'm a very people-oriented person. It's important for me to make sure my clients feel in a safe environment, make sure I feel in a safe environment, that I can trust the people that I'm working with. And I feel that here working with Shirley and my team. These people are more like family to me.
We believe entrepreneurship is a possibility for all walks of life.
Reach out to us. We would love to have a conversation to see how we can help.
We're back in everything, so glad to have this conversation back with you and all along those lines, Miss Sylvia, and all in that space. So glad that you were able to continue the conversation. But definitely, if you will share a little bit about this fascinating book of yours and all along those lines, and definitely let us know about the 9 principles. And I'm sorry that I shortchanged you 2 principles earlier and all along those lines. But if you will definitely mention these 9 principles and how we can get out of this poverty mindset and all along those lines. So definitely would love to hear your thoughts about this. And if you could just share a little bit about the book and how the book is going and all in that space. So that is definitely what I'm hoping to hear from you. And if you would love to add some of your insights, I'm sure that our audience here on the Pod TV would love to hear that and all in that space. So if you get a chance, definitely share some of these insights of yours about the poverty mindset and some of the things that you have learned and all in that space. So definitely glad to have you here and glad to learn this way that you have conquered that mindset. So if you'll share a little bit of your philosophy and how it has come about.
Okay, the 9 principles are overcoming a poverty mindset, finding positive role models, get educated. It's never too late to have your dreams come true. Ask for help. Know when to move on. How to get wealthy. Be true to what you know is right and give it back and pay it forward.
Yeah, that
Those
makes
are
a
the
lot of
steps
sense.
that I took. The main thing is overcoming a poverty mindset. It was easy to let that become a part of me. Oh, I'm always going to be this way. But no, you can overcome that poverty mindset. And that's the first step to an abundant life.
That makes a lot of sense and everything. What advice would you give to folks that are frustrated by the notion of not being able to get out of poverty? Because like I said, there's a lot of folks that are in different parts of the world. You lived in Detroit, you lived in a number of other places and all in that kind of line and everything. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about how you can reach those people that are saying living in Detroit, where you're from, or Louisiana, and definitely those are some very poor areas of the country, and get them out of this poverty mindset and all into that line. I actually called out on one of my buddies who's from Australia, and I'm hoping he'll come on and at least have some thoughts as well for your notion, because he has definitely come out of that poverty mindset as well, and at least his family has, and all in that space. So I'm going to introduce you to Mr. Shaquille Latimer, and maybe you have some thoughts just around how we can get out of that mindset and all along those lines and everything. So Shaquille, glad you were able to pop in and everything. I know I reached out to you, but yeah, Sylvia has written this powerful book that is, and she was actually a whistleblower that took on the healthcare industry and is written a book called Living the Abundant Life, 9 Principles to Move from Poverty to Prosperity. And we've been having some very interesting conversations because she's definitely mentioned some of the things I've heard you talk about, which is that you're 100% responsible for your life, and that too often we are afraid of not saying goodbye to things that are holding us back and all along those lines. And she's put it is not too late to achieve your dreams. She's in her 50s and is just now starting her entrepreneurial journey, even though she has worked and was a first-time person in her family to get a college degree, if I remember correctly. But she literally had an aunt that moved her from Louisiana to Detroit, and it definitely was taking that opportunity, even though some of her siblings didn't see it as the opportunity that it was. But that's some of what we've been talking about over the last hour or so. But I know that you come from that world of entrepreneurship, so maybe you have some ideas. She actually had read, because I mentioned Bill Danko's book, so one of the books that she read that was an inspiration to her was The Millionaire Next Door, and she also talked about another millionaire book that she had read as well as part of her own inspirations. But I'll let her share her story with you and everything.
Sorry, were you directing at me, or you wanted Sylvia to?
I wanted Sylvia to tell a little bit more about the background, and then if you've got
Please.
any thoughts for her and everything, I'm sure she would love to hear them and all, as one that has come from another part of the globe and everything. But Sylvia, if you'll just share a little bit more, once again, of your story that we've heard a little bit, but Shaquille is new to the show, so if you just share a little bit about your background and getting out of this poverty mindset.
I took a chance. I always wanted something in life. And again, we grew up poor. My mother and father did not finish high school. Actually, I was the first in my family to graduate from high school. The rest of the siblings went back and got their GED, but it was wanting something better. I didn't like being poor. I mean, I didn't like getting food stamps, having to wait on someone else before I could do something. And I knew one day that I would get out. I didn't know how, but again, I had this role model. My aunt that lived in Detroit would come down to Louisiana every year to visit us. And she asked us, one of us, to come there. You know, one sibling, she turned her down. So once I graduated from high school, I told her I wanted to go to Detroit. It was scary because I had never been out of the South, but that was the first step of me getting out of poverty, asking for help, you know, and just everything was positive. You know, I had some setbacks, but someone to actually help me and guide me and say, no matter what, get your education. You can do better. Just continually to encourage me.
And that's part of the reason that I wanted to do, and that's why I reached back into the other room that we were in earlier. And that's part of the reason I wanted to bring Shaquille in, because I know that Shaquille has actually done a lot of work with people around the international community that has actually helped as well to get people out of that poverty mindset. And he is definitely a person that has done some tremendous work in the field of helping others, not just here, but in the other parts of the globe, including some of the African nations. But I'll let Shaquille talk a little bit about what he is doing to help more of us get out of that poverty mindset that is part of what Sylvia is talking about. So Shaquille, I'm talking to you, and that's part of the reason I want you to come in here and join this conversation.
Well, first of all, well done, Sylvia, by the way. That's inspirational. First of all, what I will say to people is don't give up hope. That's the first thing, right? When it comes to mindset, don't look at it and go, oh, this is so insurmountable. I can't possibly overcome these challenges. Don't give up hope. The other thing that I'll say is it might seem like a mind trick, but have a look at some of the positives that you have in your life. And they may seem like they're not positives, but always have a look at it. I did a radio interview here in Australia a few weeks ago, and they said to me, you know, what financial advice would you give to somebody who's 18 years old? And first of all, I can't give financial advice. So I'm not licensed. Go seek your own professional advice. I'll just give that quick disclaimer now, as I did then. But here's what I would say to someone. If you're 18 years old, don't even try to make a proper financial decision. What are you going to do? You're going to listen to somebody tell you to put that in your 401k account? What you just earned $400, you're going to put that $400 in some long-term investment, you're going to put it in a CD for the next 10 years, earn 3%? Come on now. What you should do is take that $400 and risk it all. I don't care what you risk it on. Bet it on a horse, start your own business, just do something with it. Because you're not going to do anything good with it anyway. And when you lose it, you're going to go, oh, geez, I'm broke. Well, you were broke anyway, dude. You got nothing to lose. And I think when you're in that mindset, if you honestly believe you've got nothing to lose, then risk it all. What's the difference? Risk it all. Have a go. Try. Eventually you'll get there. And I think that those people that are prepared to take some risks are going to get somewhere. Now, as those risks start to pay off, and when you turn your $400 into $4,000, maybe don't risk it all anymore, right? Maybe take a few more, intelligent decisions. But you're going to build up. The other thing is, on your journey to success, whether it be through entrepreneurship or whether it just be, from organic growth, you bought a house and the house has gone up in value, whatever it is, you try to spread your wings a little bit. And I think what happens is people get very scared to do that. So what they do is they go, I'm going to read all these books and I'm going to educate myself in all these different things. And they end up just educating themselves so much that they don't do anything because they're too busy reading all these self-help books. But then when they do something and it goes wrong, they go, oh, well, I'm a failure. I'm destined to be. If I didn't finish college, of course, I'm going to be a failure. No. Right? No person is going to go through life in a straight line up. Mm-hmm. You're going to have your setbacks. Right. There's going to be a couple of times that you worked really hard and you took 5 steps forward and you got a knockback and you ended up in a worse position than what you were in. But if you keep at it, you will bounce back to a much further position than what you fell from. So that's what I say to people. And look, I'm very lucky and very privileged to have been born in Australia, to have a mother. She was a single mother for most of my life, but, she worked very hard. She educated herself. She came to Australia with $600 at 18 years of age. I don't have the balls to do that. I wouldn't never go to another country, even a country where I can speak the language like America. I wouldn't rock up in America with $600. No way in the world would I do that. But my mother did that at 18. She had me when she was 22. I'm very, very proud of what she's achieved in her life. A lot of parents of people who, a lot of parents where they haven't come from very much will say things to their kids like, make sure you get an education because that will lead to a good job. Now, I have the privilege of saying that when I have children, I'm not going to be so focused on them getting a good job because I want them to be entrepreneurial. The only reason why I can be so lax about that is because of the privilege I've had with the parents that I've got. But the life that I have is unimaginable to my mother's parents, right? They couldn't imagine being so blasé about these things. So I say that to everyone. It doesn't matter what your skin color is. It doesn't matter what your religion is. It doesn't matter what your gender is. Just keep trying. And whenever you get somebody who pushes you back, whatever challenges you encounter, the things that go wrong along the way, that is part of the journey. You will be okay. Keep at it. You'll get there.
Yeah, definitely. And that's part of what we were talking about earlier before you came in, Shaquille, because part of what Sylvia was explaining was that when both her church home in Detroit and her church home in Louisiana were very much about fiscal literacy, and we're trying to find ways to encourage people on their congregation to do things both for the greater community, but also for themselves as well. And at least that's the impression I got from what she was saying, and she can correct me if I am wrong and all in that line. And we were also talking about some of the things that you just said, because when she moved from Louisiana to Detroit, I think she said that she had a Foot Locker, and we're not even sure if Foot Lockers exist, and was carrying a lot of raggedy clothes with her that they were teasing her about when she got to Detroit. But her aunt, who is one of her, and it sounds like her main role model, was being very supportive and all along those lines. But if you want to, say if I'm being incorrect in the way that I gave a short narrative.
I'll just say, Sylvia, absolutely. You surround yourself with the people that are going to bring the best out in you. You won't always get that right. Sometimes you think the person wants the best for you and they don't. But I'll always say this to people. Believe in yourself no matter what. When everything has gone wrong, believe in yourself. Because if you don't believe in yourself, why should I? If you don't believe in yourself, why should anybody else believe in you? So even if you think, look, I screwed this up and I'm totally wrong, just keep at it. Keep going. Put one foot in front of the other. You'll get there despite the people that try to hold you back.
Yeah, definitely. Now, along those same lines, Sylvia, what is one of the greatest pieces of advice that you got? And you just got some amazing advice from Shaquille, but what is some of the advice that you got either from those books that you read or from some of the people in your life that still resonate greatly with you that helped you get out of that poverty mindset that can also help others that are listening that might be of that same mindset? So what are some of the words of advice and words of inspiration that you got from different folks? It might have been your pastor, it might have been other people, including that aunt and everything. But what are some of the words of advice that you got that still resonate with you?
Don't give up. Believe in yourself, because if you don't believe it, like it's been said several times, who else is going to believe it? I believe that I would meet someone. I didn't just quote it. At the end of the year, everybody would say New Year's resolution. I really did believe I would meet someone one day, and I believed that I would have money one day. So I just stood on it, and the opportunity presented itself when I was successful with reporting fraud. That was doing the right thing and getting out of my comfort zone. I didn't know anything about this church where I met my husband, didn't know him, wasn't in the clique and this club, and somebody hooked me up. I was just serving like I like doing, just, helping the ministry, being an usher, which I had been an usher at the former church. Just do you. Everything will come together. Don't give up. Believe in yourself. The haters gonna hate. Just don't worry about them, but just keep doing you and believing in yourself.
No, I definitely believe that's a positive attitude and is one that is very resonating with a lot of people. One of the things I've got to ask, and I've been meaning to ask this all day long because you've alluded to it a couple of times and everything, but you mentioned that there was a vehicle that you wanted and all in that space. So what was this dream vehicle of yours that you now have? Because you mentioned that you would like to get a house, and it sounds like you're on the way to getting that dream house if you don't already have it. But you mentioned this dream vehicle, and I'm thinking in my head, maybe did she want a Rolls Royce? Did she want a Mercedes? What exactly was this dream car that you saw as a kid that you always wanted?
I do have the house. The car that I was talking about is a BMW, and I saw the old version years ago, and I don't remember who said it. That's a real expensive car. You probably won't get that. And that's what I heard, that I would never get it. It took years, but I'm on my second one now.
Well, definitely. And like I said, folks, definitely, even Shaquille's got all kinds of toys and everything that he gets, and maybe he'll give and share some of those toys with us here at Pod TV one of these days and everything. But we'll get to that on another story.
They're a little. My toy is a little bit less expensive in the United States. It's actually less expensive in the United States, but that's the reason why I bought that vehicle. I had wanted one for a long time. I had I'd seen a Mercedes convertible for a really long time. I know what you're talking about. It's already public information based on other shows, Mark. I wanted the Mercedes convertible. I remember seeing it. I thought, oh, that looks so gorgeous. But in my heart, I really wanted to have the Rolls Royce or the Bentley. And then I saw the Bentley convertible. It wasn't brand new, and I saw it there. It was being sold at a price I thought was relatively cheap for the model of car that it was. It was still an expensive car. And I went, you know what? I've bloody earned it. So I'm going to go and buy the thing. And I've had so much fun in that vehicle. I haven't driven it for a while now because it's in being serviced and I've been away from Australia. But I enjoyed every moment of it. And turns out I'm going to be selling that one shortly and getting something else. But I'm pretty much going to sell it for around about the same price of what I paid for it. So, worth everything that I paid for it. But that's the thing, don't ever forget when you do get the success, you have to treat yourself, right? I think, we had the Rich Dad, Poor Dad people on one of our previous shows. They talk about that, like, look after yourself. We have to pay our taxes. We have to pay for our children. We have to pay for all these other things. If you're a very family-oriented person like I am, you try to look after, your parents, your brothers and sisters, your cousins, all that. You look after so many other people. Don't feel guilty when you want to do this one thing. And then it's so funny how the people in your family that don't actually have a lot will say to you, oh, that's such a waste of money. How could you spend how could you spend $200 buying that T-shirt? Are you mad? It's like, yeah, because this shirt here that I'm wearing, I bought this shirt in Florida a few years ago, before COVID. I bought this shirt. And the reason why I used to love coming to the US, it's not quite like that now, but back then was because with the currency exchange, Australian dollar was a lot higher back then. Shopping in the US was fantastic. So I was buying all this stuff for what was relatively inexpensive compared to what we paid in Australia. But in Australian dollars, I paid about $180 for this shirt. Right? But that was like 5 years ago, and I'm still wearing it now because I love the shirt. And people say, well, why would you spend $180 on this shirt? Because I really like the shirt. I really like the shirt and I wanted to buy it, and I'm not going to feel guilty about it. That's the thing on your way to success. Enjoy yourself.
Right.
You can look after other people, you can do all these other things, but not every decision that you have to make is on financial reasons. Sometimes you're just going to, you're going to pay $50 for the steak because you really want to go to that restaurant, even though it's overpriced. You just want to go to that restaurant, right? You just want to buy that nice car. You just want to, do you know what I mean? Like, enjoy yourself. You're only here once.
No, that makes a lot of sense and everything. Hey, actually, Sylvia, Shaquille actually kind of alluded to it, and we've actually had some interesting discussions on different other shows, and I'd love to hear your standpoint about this. But there is this notion that exists of paying it back or playing it back and all in that space. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you feel that you have any obligation or any need to give back to the community that you came from? And do you have people that are sometimes expecting you to do more than you are probably even capable of doing? Because I do know that sometimes folks will think that because somebody has got some wealth and some prosperity that they are automatically going to have to give back to their community. And like you mentioned, you came from a poor part of Louisiana. So I'm sure that some of the relatives came out of the woodwork, and there's always this notion. You actually earlier talked about the entertainers of them giving back, but how much of that do you feel is a responsibility of yours, or do you feel it's not a responsibility at all?
I don't feel it's a responsibility. I don't let anyone put me on a guilt trip, but I do give to organizations like one company. They feed the not necessarily homeless, but people that may just can't afford a meal every day of the week. They feed 7 days a week. And that actually place where they feed at is where we used to go and get food when I was little, and they would let us get food on credit. So I donate to them regularly. The Salvation Armies, just organizations that's been around forever helping people. And I help my family some, but I don't feel obligated to take care of them. Some of them had the same, opportunity that I did. My aunt asked, all of my siblings to come. They didn't want to leave out of their comfort zone. But I'm big on giving back, but I don't think I'm obligated for, people to try to take advantage of me. But I don't have a problem with giving back and helping people because people did come to our rescue.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And both you and Shaquille mentioned it. Why do you think people have such a hard time getting out of their comfort zone? Because it seems like a lot of times when people are struggling, they see the success. I know a number of people will see the success, and he is a very successful businessman that Shaquille has. They see you as an author, they see the successes, and they oftentimes will see the benefits of it, but they don't see the fact that y'all had to get outside of your comfort zone in order to have that success. And that's for both you, Sylvia, and Shaquille. Why do you feel so many people have a hard time getting out of that comfort zone? And I'd love to hear Shaquille's thoughts, but definitely I'll start with you, Sylvia.
Okay. It's fear. Even with me wanting to meet someone, when I met my husband, I'm thinking, oh, this is a big step. And he said it was okay for me to say this. He said his friend told him, don't do it, man. You're marrying some woman that's over 50. She's never been married. So he said, don't do it. So I tease him all the time. I said, I'm glad you didn't listen to him. And I know you're not glad. He wasn't trying to be smart. He was actually probably looking out for him. So I was the same way when I started thinking about it. Like, I'm used to being by myself. So sometimes we're comfortable with being uncomfortable, or just the fear of, what if this, what if that, what if things doesn't work out? Well, what if they do work out? So I think it's just the fear in general.
Yeah. Shaquille, any thoughts about that whole notion of the comfort zone and why people can get out of it and everything?
Yeah, I mostly echo what Sylvia said there, but also I think a lot of people, it's the fear of failure. And like I just said before with financial decisions, If you're 18 years old, you've got $100 in your pocket, just risk it. Who cares? What's going to go wrong for you? You're not going to be any worse off. You know what I mean? Like, you're in a bad position anyway. Like, you're 18. It doesn't matter. You'll earn that $100 back tomorrow. It's okay. Go for it.
Yep. Definitely agree with you on that, and definitely got to have more of that kind of conversation. I think Shaquille's internet may be doing a little bit of things that go on when we are coming from down under and everything in that space. But definitely, what do you say to that as well, Sylvia? Because you definitely mentioned, and he kind of alluded to it, that notion of the. Yeah, I hear you now. Yeah, you were breaking up.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, like I say that I quite enjoy listening to American country music. And there's a couple of songs I quite like. One of them is Life's a Dance and Give It a Whirl, this sort of stuff. It's like, that girl that you never asked out, right? You were so afraid when you were in year 7 that she was going to like make fun of you and all the rest of it. But you have no idea what she would have actually said. You have no idea what would have actually happened. And I think it's that same nervousness that we all have when we're like, a little kid, or as a girl, you might have a crush on that guy at school or whatever, and you're like, oh, should I approach them? Do you know what I mean? That same nervousness, I think, holds us back when we're later on in life. What if I start this business and, everyone's telling me that, I shouldn't do it, and what if I fail? They're all going to say, I told you shouldn't have done that. And who are you listening to? Are you listening to, you want to start a restaurant in Louisiana? And all your family tells you, and all your friends tell you, and they mean well. They're not horrible people. They're not trying to hold you back, right? They're nice people. But they say to you, that's a really bad idea. It's never going to work. Are you related to Gordon Ramsay? Is Gordon Ramsay telling you not to do the restaurant? Or is your mum telling you not to do the restaurant and your mum's, a school teacher?
Right.
Do you know what I mean? My mother's a nurse. Some of the great ideas I've had in life, my mother has gone, well, my mother's been really awesome. She's never shot down one of my ideas, but a lot of the time I was like, you want to do what? Okay, right? But if my mother told me not to do something, how does she know? I love my mother dearly, but she's a nurse. She's not going to be able to, you get what I'm saying? So I think it's really important that just, what are you scared of? Like, what's the worst that's going to happen? If you're poor, you don't have anything, you're trying to have a go, you're trying to like achieve something, what's the worst that's going to happen? You're going to try and fail? Well, who cares? You're no worse off than what you are, so try anyway.
Yep, that makes a lot of sense. Hey, Sylvia, what's your take on that? Because I do think that some people are too afraid, and they are afraid of that failure. I alluded to that earlier. They are listening to that inner voice and afraid to take on the risk, because there are a lot of risk involved with entrepreneurship and everything. So what is your notion around that, Sylvia? And I'm also wondering, what is the reaction now that you are coming back as a success? Because like you said, you went from poverty to prosperity. So I'm sure that some of your high school classmates are shocked that you are as successful as you are, and all along those lines. And what kind of reaction have you gotten from those that knew you as a youngster?
It's kind of mixed feelings, because some must say, well, you always was like that. And, some are surprised. But the thing is, use the negativity or the fear to encourage you, because I had some public relations work done and got in some articles, and I saw one comment, somebody made a comment and saying, oh, these people just use these self-help books to become billionaires because of their insecurities. And that bothered me maybe for a few hours. And then I got encouraged. And my husband said, well, they probably need to buy the book. Don't worry about negative people. There's always going to be negative people, somebody that don't even know you sitting behind a computer. Use that as motivation. I'm like, we all have insecurities in something, but I'd rather be where I am today than to still, living paycheck to paycheck. So don't worry about the critics and the haters. People are going to always have something to say, whether you do good or bad. So use that as a motivation, the moment, and not concentrate on what everybody's saying. People are not going to be happy whatever you do, is what I'm trying to say.
That makes a lot of sense.
You asked Sylvia earlier about the obligation to help other people.
Mm-hmm.
in general and from the community that you're from. You know, I can give money, and I do give money to lots of charities. But I think that the people that I help the most are the people who I give my time to.
Mhm.
And that could be something, Sylvia, like writing a book where you're never going to know all the people that were helped by your book.
Right.
Some of those people are going to read that book and you're never going to know their names. You're never going to know who they are. That's a very selfless thing to put your experiences out there and have other people take what they can, just disregard the things that are of no value to them. It's a selfless thing to do. And I think that when you give your time and your experience and that sort of thing to people, that can be a very, very valuable thing. And when people talk about what I've achieved and all the things that I've done, and I've certainly had some wild achievements, it's good, but it's almost unfortunate that most of my grandest achievement, not most, but a lot of my grandest achievements are online. People can Google me and see what I've done. And if you type my name into Google, the second most searched term is what my net worth is, which is not published, right? But I do get a kick out of that. I think, how many of you guys are actually trying to look up how much I'm worth? I'm not that rich. I'm okay, but I'm not that rich. I'm not on the Forbes list or anything. But I look at that and I think, well, as thrilling as that is, the people that I help the most, I'm not, I'm not there to kind of give you some perfect thing, like just do what I did and you're going to get there. Just follow my footpath through and you're going to be this amazing person. That's not how it's going to be. And when you Google me, what it doesn't show is all of the failures I've had along the way.
Mhm.
And I've had a lot. And I dare say I've had more failures in my life, from personal relationships to business to everything else. I think I've had more failures than most people that I know. I've also had more success than most people that I know. But the success doesn't mean anything without the failures.
Right.
And so I want people to understand, like, this is what I went through. This is what I sacrificed. This is the ridiculous stuff that I did that I got wrong, that you can look at and go, how could you make such a stupid decision? Yeah, because at the time and in the moment, that's the decision that I made, right? You can't focus on my success without understanding my failures.
True.
And I think every successful person would say that. I know you agree, Sylvia. Like,
No, that's what I was going to ask Sylvia. What do you see as your biggest failure and all along those lines? And I'm sure that even now that you have had some success and now that you have moved back to Louisiana, that there are probably people that are literally doing what Shaquille says people are doing globally to you. So I'm sure that there are a number of people both in that local media and in other medias that are sitting there trying to figure out what your net worth is and why you are the success that you are in the part of Louisiana that you are, and all in that space. But is that a correct assessment that you got people that are trying to figure out your net worth, even though it's none of their business? And also, to Shaquille's point, what is your biggest failure that you are still learning from?
Yes, they try to figure out what I'm worth. I did a book review at church, and she was like, "Oh, you know, you can win millions from this fraud. You don't have to say how much, but how can someone else do that?" So I just kind of politely said, "Yes, it's a lot you could win," but I didn't give a number. And far as maybe the failures, something I can learn from is judging people, because when I first met my husband, I saw him and I said hi to him and he didn't see me, and I was telling someone that, oh, he was stuck up. I spoke to him and he didn't say anything. So we judge people or make false assumptions about people that's not even true. So just unless you really know a person and been around them, don't listen to everything someone say or just judging someone. He said, "I never saw you." He say, he doesn't have peripheral vision on one side. And he say people always accuse him of walking right by them. And we do that in life. Just judge a situation. I don't want to take that job. I don't want to go over here. Buy something we don't even really know. Just thinking, oh, this may happen. So just try to get the facts and the truth about whatever you want to do. And as Shaquille said, you're going to fail sometime, but you're going to have successes too. But
Well,
don't judge people or make assumptions.
now we're getting to wrap up the show, and that was actually part of the discussion we've had on this network several times. Shaquille has been painted certain ways and all in that kind of space and everything. But why, Sylvia, do you feel that we are so quick to make assumptions about people and to make judgments about people without trying to, as the old saying goes, walk a mile in their shoes and all along those lines? And I know that I have been guilty, and I'll admit what I've been guilty of doing that as well and everything. But we oftentimes don't do enough of that, walking in other people's shoes and everything. So why do you, Sylvia, feel that that is something that it happens, and what can we do to make sure that we don't fall into that trap?
I think it's human nature. Just try to find out about whatever it is that you don't know about. It's like the churches. People talk about mega churches. Oh, they're all after money. But the mega church I went to, like I said, was multifaceted. They taught about relationships. I wanted somebody with money. Well, you didn't have money. So, you got to keep a balance. And he would always say, you could get with someone and you may not get along with them. What you bring to the table, know yourself. Stop saying, I want this and I want that. I wanted a BMW, but could I afford one 25, 30 years ago? No. So, you just have to learn about stuff and quit saying you want things. This is no get rich quick scheme. Everything is about patience. You're going to have failures in life, but again, just keep going. Don't make assumptions. Life is not easy, but go after what you want.
Shaquille, I don't know if you had anything you wanted to add. There was two questions that I asked every guest pretty much on the radio show and everything, but I didn't know if you had any things that you want to add
What's
about
that Rolling
misconceptions.
Stone? What's that song? I think it's by the Rolling Stones. There's a lyric in it where I think it's "I can't get no satisfaction." I think that's a song, but it might not be. Where he says, "You may not always get what you want, but you'll get what you need." Is that the song?
Yeah.
Like you say you want something. Well, when you were 8 years old, all you wanted was the cotton candy at the fair. That was all you wanted. I mean, you don't know what you want, right? God will give you what you need. Just go with it. Just go with the flow. Be ambitious. Don't be afraid to try. We talked about you talk about things that you want. Look, sometimes if you spend your whole life not living at all because you feel like you can't live until you've gotten all the things that you want, the problem is that when you get everything, you just sit back and reflect and sit back and imagine a world where you got everything that you wanted. Do you imagine how boring that would be?
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine if you had the perfect partner and you guys never had any arguments and you lived in the perfect house and you had, a whole heap of maids and butlers and the gardens were always done. You had groundkeeping staff. You lived in this castle and all the food was prepared and all the beds were done. The clothes were washed. What would you do with yourself? Can you imagine how boring that would be? Right? So you might want all these things, so you think, but don't stop living because you're hoping to achieve all these things, right? Enjoy the journey, and there's always going to be something better. You're going to change over time. But as I said right at the beginning when you first invited me on, never give up hope. I think I get a lot of inspiration, not just from my parents and that generation, but actually the generation above her. Above my mother was her mother. She couldn't read and write properly. And she was told when her husband died, my grandfather died, don't teach your daughters. She had 3 daughters. My mother was the youngest child. She had 3 daughters and a son. Don't bother giving them an education because they can just get married. They'll be fine. Just educate your son. I wouldn't be where I am unless my grandmother had have insisted that all of her daughters got an education, which meant that my mother could come to Australia. So, don't ever give up. Don't ever think that things are insurmountable. Just keep thundering through. And sometimes You may not get what you want, and you may not be able to achieve everything that you want in your life. But I'm sure that when you look at your child might be 70 and you're 90, but you know that your 70-year-old child has achieved a life that you wanted. You will find some satisfaction and peace and contentment in what you do for the next generation. You'll find it in yourself. Just don't stop living, don't stop trying, and never stop believing in yourself.
No, I definitely believe in that. Some great advice that Shaquille gave and everything I said earlier, and I'm getting ready to toss it to you, Sylvia, as we get ready to wind down and everything. But on just about every show, particularly the radio show and the online dinner party, not so much the World Edition, because that's a whole different kind of show and everything. But on these other shows that I am part of, I definitely love our guests to tell where they can be the books and what they are doing can be obtained. So if you will tell folks how they can obtain your book that I mentioned, those 9 principles and everything, and definitely the global network. So I'm always about positivity and things along those lines. So if there are any message of positivity and hope that you would love to give to our global network, I am sure that they would love to hear that. So we'll start off with, and if Shaquille wants to jump in, he can as well. But I'll start with you, Sylvia, if you want to share how your book can be obtained and also any message of positivity and hope that you would like to share.
My book can be obtained from Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Goodreads, Ingram Spark. The message I would like to give to people that's already been said, never give up. It's never too late. You're going to have failures in life, but that's a part of life. Go after your dreams and you will be able to achieve them. Thank you.
No, definitely appreciate it. Shaquille, anything you want to add or any message you want to give to Sylvia before we get ready to get out of here? It's that lovely robot that one of our earlier producers gave to this particular show a long time ago, and I still use it and everything to get us on out of here and all in that space. But it's the theme that certain people that used to be involved with the network created for me years ago, or at least a year ago and everything. But any message that you want to share to the global audience and any message you want to give to Sylvia that you haven't already given?
Well, I couldn't wrap up the show with better words than the ones that were just shared by Sylvia. We'll say, Sylvia, honor and a pleasure to be on with you. I do buy the books of every person that is on the show with me. So I've already bought your book. And for the international audience, I am currently in Australia, logged into amazon.com.au. So the Australian website, the book is available internationally as well. So if you're outside of the United States, you are also able to buy the book outside of the US.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate it. And I'll also be getting a copy of that book as well. Some of the guests, not as many as Shaquille, and I'd be lying if I said I had, but some of the guests I have gotten their book, and I will be trying to get your book as well. As a matter of fact, I'm staring at one of the books right now that a guest sent not that long ago. So sometimes the guests will send it to me, and sometimes I'll order the books as well. So I'm going to be trying to get your book as well. I'm not as quick draw McGraw as Mr. Shaquille, and so he got it before I did and everything, and I will praise him for that, but he will be getting another purchase from me at some point as well.
Thank you.
No problem. And I hope you enjoyed the conversation, and I hope you'll come back, and I'd love to have you come on our, it's a little bit more of a cat fight than this has been and everything, but I hope that you'll come on our new show and some of our other shows as well. But I would love to welcome you to the network, and anytime you want to come on both this show that I do as well as the online dinner party or any of our other shows, I know I would welcome you. I think Shaquille would welcome you on the new show, and others would as well. So hopefully you'll make some return trips here on Pod TV to share your message of hope and what folks can do to get out of that poverty mindset.
Thank you. I enjoyed both of you.
Cool. We're going to get on out of here, and I'm glad that I was able to drag Shaquille on into here as well. So definitely looking forward to it, and hopefully we'll see you on Pod TV in the not too distant future.
It's only 4 o'clock in the morning. I had nothing better to do, right?
It's only 4 in the morning over there in Australia. It's only that early. Exactly. Now go to sleep, Shaquille.
Yes.